Namaste. My name's Richard Temple. I'm coming to you from Wales in the UK. Good evening. I say good evening because I imagine much of the audience is in India, and that side of the world. It's actually early afternoon here. It's about 3:30. Um, I'd like to say thank you to Prasanna for the opportunity to do this and the Fertile Brains. Which he, I'm reliably informed, I've been absent from the Fertile Brains for the last 2 years. I had no idea. I do apologise for not being around. My time sense is atrocious. Um, I was in the first anthology. Apparently, there's been three since then. But tonight, I hope some of you will remember me. Um, I've been asked to, before I start, to say a few words about what I think poetry is and the themes I write on. Um, what is poetry? That's a bit of a tricky one for me. For me, poetry is inevitable. I never intended to write poetry, really. I wrote some poetry when I was a teenager, and then I got into songwriting and worked in the music industry most of my life and as a designer. So poetry was just there sort of bubbling under the surface. And I tried to start writing fiction and prose. But the thing that has taken off and the thing people are most interested in is my poetry. I see poetry as just a way of being very, very careful with words. I don't often use formal structure, although I do experiment with it sometimes. But that's not to say that I write in blank verse or free verse either. It's it's more that I try to make poetry conversational. So I look at the rhythms and the patterns and alliteration that we use in everyday conversation and try to fabricate that in the form of poetry. Um, and I think perhaps that's why my poetry has proven more popular than my prose, because apparently when you're writing fiction or essays, you're not supposed to agonize over every word for hours. But as some of you may recall from when I was here previously, I'm autistic, and that's just kind of how my brain works. So I find it sometimes safer to call it poetry. I've written some poems about why I write poetry because that's kind of my point. I find it hard to communicate sometimes with people who are not on the spectrum. I find it hard to communicate with neurotypical people sometimes. And I find that poetry cuts through that a little because I have time. I can take the time to think over each word, and people aren't expecting social conventions from poetry, which is helpful too. Um, so in terms of themes, I do write about neurodiversity, um, and I write about communication problems and the difficulty I find sometimes in connecting with the neurotypical world, and some of the symptoms that people find strange. For instance, my time blindness. I genuinely have a different perception of the passing of time to the majority of people. A lot of us do. We're not as rare as you think, but we have to try to shoehorn ourselves into a reality that doesn't come naturally to us. So poetry is kind of my opportunity to express myself from within my own reality, and hopefully people will take the time to try and understand it. Um, and I realise sometimes that means it comes across as a little surreal. My other themes that I touch on quite regularly would be aging, because it's a thing that's happening to me, and failing health, especially mental health, which again, I simply my experience of life. It's not that I'm looking for sympathy or trying to be an activist in any way. Um, it's how I am every day. So when I try to communicate clearly through poetry, those are the themes that come up. As a result, some of the things I write are quite political too. Again, that's not really intended as a partisan party political stand. albeit it often does come across maybe as liberal and or anti-capitalist, largely because those conventions and those ways of seeing the world are part of the barrier that I find um, neurodivergent people have to battle in order to try to pass as being like you. And when it comes down to it, I think that's another of my themes is advocacy for pacifism and for humanitarianism and humanism, because I think in the end, all humans of all cultures, all colours, all religions, and indeed all neuro um, paradigms have more in common than we have to separate us. And I think that's often lost because as humans, we look for patterns and we look for patterns. We look at people and go, do you fit into the same patterns, the same culture, the same ways of thinking and ways of doing things that I do? And if not, you're scary and you're different. But in reality, we have infinitely more in common with even the person we might consider to be the most at odds with our reality than we do difference. And if we can just see that, then perhaps something useful can come of it. So yes, my themes tend to be aging, time, humanity, human connection and pacifism, neurodiversity, mental illness, physical illness. Probably covers it. Something else will come up, I'm sure. Much of that I approach with what I hope is a sense of humour, sometimes self-depreciating, sometimes quite cynical, because otherwise, talking honestly about your feelings and your experience, your life experience, especially when you do have social and health issues and other things, can just get a bit depressing. And why would anyone want to listen to that? It's kind of the Sylvia Plath dilemma. A critic at Sylvia Plath time said, famously said that he was sure her poetry was very helpful to her mental health, but why would anyone else need to listen to that? Now he was proven wrong. Clearly, people do like to have a window into other people's suffering and difficulties, but maybe it's an English thing, but I don't feel the need to come out and just moan. So I try to make it entertaining, or try to connect at least. Try to connect. This is a piece called "I Want My Poetry Too," which hopefully says all of the things I've been rambling about for the last 9 minutes a bit more clearly. I want my poetry to speak to you, to break straight through the walls of individuality, the illusion that divides our reflections as we try to unify, see that you and me, that the forest is the trees, and breathe. We have our own perspective. We interpret our surroundings, confounding those who would separate, to hate the contrasts and the mysteries, secrets, personalities, knowing that inclusion risks fusion. If words can heal, appeal, or reveal to just one listener the nature of the mirror that reflects itself forever and knows itself unique, it is our duty to speak. It's not all going to be that. Don't. As an example, I wanted to maybe break down a little more what poetry is and how I see it. And of course, straight away, that's a poem I've forgotten to cue, which is the kind of sheer incompetence you can probably expect for the rest of the half an hour of this show. So bear with me just one second while I find it. This is called "This Is Not a Poem." This is not a poem. If it were, we might expect a prosody, contrived as formal stanza structure like iambic walking bass pentameter with sneaky hidden rhymes or similar. Or we'd expect a scansion crafted and self-aware, with attention to the diction, so I would never dare to call this a poem. Truth to tell, a truly traditional quatrain or perfectly composed poetic prose assumes artful alliteration and articulation, lamentably lacking from this miserable metaphor mishmash. In poetry, we could expect subtle use of simile to express spectral emotions and ideas as oily water dripping from shining rock to form mineral solidity like Edith at the fall of Sodom. But what is a poem? From the Greek poiein, meaning to make, an artifice of arrangement, ideas given intensity, a wandering clarity, a language of beauty, not a self-referential travesty of parody. No, no, this is not poetry. It's lacking a beat to mimic the heart, to open the mind, to delve deep inside, to a place where the words speak direct to the soul, to connections beyond simple words and ideas, until minds become merged, embraced in a light from primordial fire, a natural desire to be one. Or a poem might rhyme, if inclined to resign to a streamlined design of a kind much maligned, in a mind unconfined, disinclined to refine, leave behind the blind grind enshrined in mankind. But not here, no fear. I'm no Shakespeare, it's clear. What kind of narcissism, cynicism, egotism could lead to such aphorisms, such degrees of rank nihilism, literary onanism? Not me. No, sirree, most definitely not poetry, and neither is it a bloody haiku, evoking nature's natural beauty and majesty in just a few words. Now, that should have said pure beauty and majesty because that broke the haiku, evoking nature's pure beauty and majesty in just a few words. So you can't afford to screw up with a haiku because natural. I added 2 extra syllables. I do apologize, but I hope you enjoyed it otherwise. Okay, one more meta poetry about poetry. This is called Words, and this has something to say about why I feel the need to use this sort of structure to communicate. Words. Let's hear what you have to say. Speak out and use your words. You've toiled through time to create your world, reached out and touched, consumed and built ideas, gathered, melded, born, seizing spirit of their own, incarnations of creation, weakly wielding weapons handed down through generations, a brief window of words. In the beginning was the word, spanning seas of isolation, melding that which split asunder, healing wounds, worlds and wonder. Beyond all doubt, you must speak out and use your words. Evening falling, final freeze, a filamentary field of frost, light subsiding, overriding, hearts at last confiding, secrets, shame, regrets, and lost connections, reflections, affection, rejections, directions, and breathe. We wait and whisper, hoping still when all is said it will be done, and silence is the golden solace, seen not heard, safe in sound. Our secrecy is cowardice, our privacy is artifice, a held tongue leaves us powerless. I'm listening, use your words. It's getting late, and last I heard, the cards are on the table. Time is over for rehearsal. This dilemma's universal. The truth is you were never seen, so now you'd best be heard. Quit the herd. It's absurd. It's now or never. Use your words. Let's hear what you have to say. Okay, I told a lie. I said that was going to be the last of the meta poems about poetry, but I suppose this could be considered that way too. I offer this by way of explanation as to why I feel the need to write things down and to agonize over every word rather than to just talk to people like normal people do. This is called When I Speak. When I speak, I hear my mother, timid, stoic, irrepressible, empathic, nervous, rejecting expectations, seeking understanding. When I speak, I hear my father, indomitable, impossibly assured, optimistically fatalistic, jovial, resolute, unstoppable, seizing every day. When I speak, I hear music, pounding drums and screaming guitars, melodies and cacophony, words of defiance demanding freedom. When I speak, I hear companions, questioning, reaching, seeking kindness, connections and reflections, touching and supporting, pursuing elusive trust. When I speak, I hear my teachers, gentle Quakers and dusty academics, a forlorn quest for discipline and convention, frustrated and aghast. When I speak, I hear the media, tales of war and desperation, deceit on the doorstep, intolerance, violence, hatred, arguing who is to blame. When I speak, I hear my culture, privileged yet downtrodden, misplaced pride, ironic humour, self-depreciation, clinging to a long past exceptionalist dream. When I speak, I hear all this and more, a clattering racket of environment and history, deranging my thoughts and controlling my tongue, a sum of all things. So who do you hear when I speak? How can you judge what I say? Where can I find the tiny voice inside, and what might it have to convey? Perhaps if I write. So, yeah, apologies for the various alarms going off around. I'm not sure which devices are giving me alerts, therefore I can't easily turn them off. Hopefully, just killed a couple of volumes on things. Hopefully that'll help. So this is the first. Okay, I'm moving on now. I've spent half of my half an hour talking about poetry and why I write poetry. I'm going to get onto some actual poetry of consequence now. This is called Boxed In. This was kind of the title poem of a brief collection I did for the Morecambe Poetry Festival this year. It was a very, very limited edition because it was intended as merchandise for the festival, although there are a couple of copies still left. I think if anyone wants one, get hold of me somehow. Anyway, this is called Boxed In. Drowning under diagnoses, words and ways to criticize, categorize, excuse and explain failures and pain. Abbreviations abbreviated, vindicated, validated, pitted and pigeonholed. Neatly labelled, packed and posted, promptly ghosted, buttoned down, identified. People need an explanation. Ranking systems to a system. How else can they qualify and nullify? Learn the tricks to entertain, find a niche and stay the same. We'll tolerate your broken brain, but challenge us on what is real and retribution you shall feel. Down, boy, sit, reiterate. Get in your cage, accept your place. A fundamental fall from grace. Don't even want to see your face. Frankly, it's embarrassing. We labelled you. We did our bit. Now act the part, you little shit. Why should we do all the work? We're the majority. Get down with democracy. We're trying to accommodate, allow you to assimilate, but now it's time to pull your weight. Put on your mask. Get back to work. We're trying here. Don't be a jerk. You got all you were asking for. Acronyms and medication. What's with all the provocation? Sick leave is just paid vacation. Offer something in return. Get in your box. Look after you. Everything will be just fine. If only you will stay in line and never bite the hand that feeds you. It's true. You always knew. It's just another way to say, don't shove it in our bloody face. Just stay in lane, accept the blame and remain safely in your box. I used to hide and weep in the darkness of this crate, but of late I've started to see me. In chinks of light, I'm learning to be me, to realise, to drop the disguise. My name is Jack and I cry, surprise! There you go. I did promise actually in some of the in some of the publicity I did for this, I did promise that it would be in some way seasonal because well, it's Christmas here in the UK and in much of the Western world and well all over the world really. But I realised that not everyone's Christian, but most faiths and most cultures have some sort of winter celebration, and well, I guess it's winter in the whole of the Northern Hemisphere. If you're watching this in the Southern Hemisphere, I'm sorry, I'm trying really hard to be cosmopolitan and failing. This is called Season's Greetings, some cheerful Christmas poetry. Write poetry for Christmas. Normalize the season as a reason to be kind, to find inspiration, to be a decent human. Dispense with the judgment and hatred held sacred the rest of the year. The ultimate fear that there's nothing more here. So knock back a beer and find space for acceptance. Distance yourself from the darkened decay of everyday life. Do you hope to find Christ in spiced wine? That's just fine for a time. But you know once it's over, your seasonal fervour retreats in the face of next year's disgrace. For now, happy Christmas. Just focus on spurious wishes that wither to dust as dozens of voices scream out across purposes. Take the whole world and pass it to actual fascists. And while watching it burn in a trash fire, conspire to call it a happy new year. Cheers. So yeah, hope you all have a lovely Christmas and a lovely New Year. But don't worry, it's you know, I don't want to bring anyone down. It's just my opinion. It's just my point of view in the world, and I am, after all, a man of little consequence. What will they say? A man of little consequence passed like a ghost, leaving no trace. Actions, words, absurd thought. He ought to, for sure, have amounted to more. The only trace of broken track through bracken, fractured promises, fatuous premises, only wounds to mark his wake. His heart was in the wrong place. He never lied to your face. Faint praise erased by memories of tragedies and travesties. Lacking significance, lost diligence, must try harder. Always harder, never softer. Malodorous man-child, weak and wanting, waits on a tricycle, wending cyclical figures of 8 under bare-branched canopies of breeze-blown trees. The trail of a spectre, no rock turned. So, as I was saying at the start, I don't tend to follow poetic conventions as such, but I do use alliteration, I do use rhyme, I certainly use rhythms. I just tend to use complex and evolving rhythms and rhymes in the wrong places. I think of it as being like jazz. I'm writing poetry like John Coltrane. Oh, I'm not putting myself on that kind of pedestal, but hopefully you understand my point. There's sort of, I suppose, there's a through history from the American beat poets into and then tainted by the British performance poets of the 70s and 80s, John Cooper Clarke and Pam Ayres and whatever. So trying to keep it conversational. But I do sometimes experiment with actual structure, and this is an example. This is called Connections, Not Cracks. No compromise, connections, not cracks. Shatter static, here be heard. Words for just one other, and seen through their eyes. Shatter static, here be heard. Be ourself joined at birth and seen through their eyes, inside my own, my other. Be ourself joined at birth. Find worth in connections, projection inside my own, my other mind. Individual in division. Find worth in connections, projection, boldly reinventing mind, individual in division. See reflections, then blink. Boldly reinventing words for just one other. See reflections, then blink. No compromise. Connections, not cracks. And I was supposed to have sent that off to be published, and I haven't yet. I probably have missed the deadline. That would just be typical. I'll try to remember to do that after this show. We've got 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna attempt to throw in an extra one, I think, because I've gone a little faster than I intended to, as is often the case, and I should have been prepared for that, really. So bear with me just 1 second, and I'll try and figure what I'm going to do with the time. Okay. Let's see. I'll do Neuroverse because this is popular. It's maybe I do it a lot, but as we have established, I haven't done anything for Fertile Brains for a couple of years, so you've probably all forgotten it by now. This is Neuroverse. Middle-aged man dispossessed, stressed. Diagnosis of neurosis preceded at best. Brain is divergent, its function insurgent. It's not a disease, just a different perspective, subjective. Removed from the collective, not defective, not neurotypical, linguistically hypocritical, calling difference disorder is clinically cynical, political irony, explains the anxiety, neurovariety. Me being me defines impropriety. Outside of society, but this is just how you might view my reality. Empathy, sympathy, all this futility. We have different ways. When I don't meet your gaze or remember your face or your name, and I phrase my speech in a way that suggests a game or apportioning blame or in some way defaming your typical brain, I mean no offence, that's not my intent. As hell's road is paved with the best of intentions, by dissension from conventions, conversational pretensions, I'm eternally damned by misapprehension. I'm not neurodiverse. In fact, quite the reverse. It's perverse to infer normal might be adverse to reality. Chronically recurring banality, an idiosyncrasy that incomprehensibly posits reality as neurodemocracy. I'm the same as before, and I'm sure you'll afford me habitual courtesy free from adversity if I'm able to label by way of alleviant, allow me to reinvent, pose my own argument. Disobedient yet radiant, I'll take neurodeviant. Thank you. Okay. Right. Last couple of minutes. I'm going to give you another Christmas poem. This is an older poem, but I've updated it for this year. And this is Santa Saves the Planet, 2024. And then I'll let you go about your lovely Christmas Eve. This is Santa Saves the Planet. A family gathered from far and wide, break bread together at Christmas tide. Glistening lights in 1,000 trees join hands to sing praise on the frozen breeze. It's a magical time when wishes come true, a time of goodwill as the seasons renew. When a child full of hope and an honourable cause took time to write letters to Santa Claus. Well, they've been good all year long, so you see, Santa took their request very seriously and, inclined to agree with this unselfish child, he dumped the red suit he had always reviled. Coca-Cola be damned, for the time had arrived. If you live at the pole, it just can't be denied. Just this morning, in fact, had his patio thawed and fell into the sea. He was truly appalled. It's just simply too much, as the letter explained. The sea's full of plastic, the forest's inflamed. So a meeting was called with one vote for each elf, how to strategize redistribution of wealth. Thus was a plan conceived. All elves consented to a Christmas Eve schedule that's unprecedented. They would need to rebrand. It was dangerous, but damn it, this is the year Santa's saving the planet. The world wakes as always on this Christmas morning. The children excited, the adults are yawning. But regardless of whether they're naughty or good or Christian or wealthy, in all neighborhoods, kids found the same thing at the foot of their bed. No, not piles of wrapped toys, just one stocking instead, with an orange, a walnut, a small pomegranate, and a recycled pamphlet called Santa Saves Planet. Now, for most of the world, it's a lovely surprise for kids to get presents, regardless of size. Assuming the shared culture is crazy, it's clear. For some, it's the only fruit they'll eat this year. But although it was meant with the best of intentions, it's true that the pamphlet caused some apprehension. New uniform, black, just rebranded tradition, but hooded and posed with a K-47. Just what happens when elves are in charge of the fashion. Still, In some of the richest industrial nations, the children aren't happy with Santa's salvation. There'll be terrible tantrums at crushed expectations of iPhones released with slight modifications. The parents are fighting, the adults got nothing. They're out in the street drinking, screaming, and cussing. Tensions are rising as bricks start flying. They're looting the shops now. The children are crying. The city's aflame, but the cops aren't responding. The chief of police is on hold and still waiting as Amazon trace where his peasants went missing. It's out of control, a revolt of the richest. Biden blames terrorists, Trump says it's socialist. Starmer insists he declared all his cash gifts. A global emergency, uncontrolled anarchy. Here come the communists raising a cheer, singing, "We'll keep the red nose flying here." Governments crumble as world leaders panic because cheeky old Santa is saving the planet. And with that, I will say Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and it's lovely to be back at the Fertile Brains. Thank you very, very much to all. Namaste. Good night.